This is part 2 of chapter 4, communicating with children and families and doing a physical assessment on children. So as much as possible, we want to try and use play. You can see it looks like we traced this little girl's body onto the paper, and now she's using a stethoscope and pretending to listen so that the equipment is not scary when it's used on her. And here she is with, I assume, her brother, and they're playing with it, trying it out on each other, and again, using play to learn that it's not scary and not painful. So when we do a physical exam on a child, we're going to do a weight and measure. But on a child up to 36 months, so that's up to 3 years of age, we're going to lay them flat, and we're going to mark from the top of the head to the heels. Now for an infant, you got to kind of stretch them out because infants like to stay flexed. A kid over 36 months, then we're going to use a standing height, and we're going to do weights on both of them, and we're going to plot on the growth chart. Remember, growth charts are different between male and female, and there also are some that are by month for younger kids and then by year for older kids. And on an infant, we do not just the height and weight, but also the head circumference, the chest circumference, and the abdominal circumference. There are ethnic differences and gender differences on growth. We have what we expect, what is average, but really on those growth charts is what I'm talking about, but really what we want is what's the child's trend. If they come from the small family and they're at the 5th percentile always, that's fine. If they come from a family who's tall, they used to be at the 75th percentile and now they're dropping down to the 5th. Now it's a concern. So the trend is what we're really worried about, not any single point on that growth chart. On infants, that head circumference is an important measurement. That's telling us about brain growth. And if it's growing too large, too fast, we're worried that there's just a buildup of CSF in the head, hydrocephalus, and if it's not growing fast enough, now we're worried about microcephaly. Children the same age can look very different, and some of those are ethnic differences, some are just families. Some families are taller and some are shorter, and it can still be normal. So here's our growth chart. Remember, you need the correct gender, and then you plot on there. So physiologic measures. When we do a child's assessment, we're going to get vital signs, sort of like you do with adults. Temp, heart rate, respiratory rate, BP, and then we want to assess pain as well. How we do it's going to be different for a child, but we're still going to collect the same data. On an infant and toddler, when we do the vital signs, we're going to want to count respirations first before we disturb them. That's really the only way to get a good respiration. If they're crying, we can't get it. I always count respirations with my stethoscope. I find that easier than trying to see the rise and fall of the chest. But still, do that first. Then do an apical heart rate. Apical heart rate is supposed to be a minute. Always a minute if you're doing apical. And then save your blood pressure and your temperature for last, because those two are scary. The blood pressure does squeeze a little. The temperature, an infant, we do axillary, and holding that arm down is just, infants don't like being held still. On kids over a year, we do tympanic of the eardrum, and I think it's because they can't see it. It's not really painful, but we pull on the ear and we're doing something just outside of their vision, and so they're a little scared of what might be happening. And blood pressure. We do blood pressure on any extremity. The closer to the heart, the better, so it's always best up on that brachial artery on the upper arm, but it can be done over any artery, so you can do it on the lower arm and use the radial artery. It can be done on the leg, on the thigh, and you'd use the popliteal behind the knee. The one you're going to actually probably see most often at Children's Hospital is the lower leg. You're putting the line on the cuff usually says over the artery, so you're putting it over this post-tibial here. If you were to use a stethoscope and do it manually, you'd be listening here. And that's where you're going to see it most often. The closer to the heart, the better, but on an infant, keeping their arms still long enough to get a good blood pressure reading is pretty hard. It's easier to keep the legs still. And so that's why you'll see them use that very frequently on infants.